daily stream. Well, it actually might be our last kind of daily stream. It's Monday. Mondays are always exciting, the starts of the week. I know a lot of us, it's not the most exciting day. For me, I enjoy Mondays because I'm able to get back into the swing of things. On the weekend, I kind of am not always doing a lot of work. I do some things. Saturdays are usually a day where I kind of spend a little bit of time taking a break and resting. And Sundays I'm usually doing some sort of work. But we're here on our stream today, and we're going to talk with Matthew. Super excited to have him on in here in a minute or two. And we're going to chat about some games and game elements he's been using in his class. And we're going to talk about tabletop role-playing games, because we've been playing, myself and my wife and some friends. We've started Dungeons and Dragons campaign. I've been DMing that, and if you're not familiar with DM, that's a dungeon master or controlling the game. You kind of set up the scenarios, you describe the scene, you help the players kind of discover the world. So I've been learning about that because we started carrying Dungeons and Dragons products at BGE's Tabletop too. So we're going to talk about role-playing games. We're going to talk about games in class with Matthew here in just a minute. But before that, I have one quick update. As I mentioned, we're going to be in the Northridge Fashion Center Mall here in Los Angeles. So with that, we were going to do these daily streams almost every day until we open our brick-and-mortar store. So since we are kind of opening a store, we're gonna stop our streams for a couple months. We'll be back in January with some more probably daily streams, and while we're doing the store, we'll still stream just maybe once or twice a week. I gotta figure out what the schedule is gonna look like, my personal schedule, and with the kiosk at the mall. All right, with that, we're gonna bring on Matthew. So welcome to the stream, Matthew.
Thanks, Dustin. Glad to be here.
I'm excited to chat with you again. We've chatted a couple times. We always talk about games and playing games. We've had a chance to meet in person once.
Twice. We played games at a game store that you were thinking about doing events at, and then you interviewed me in person.
Oh, right. Yeah, that was in person. I was like, yeah that's
just
right.
Before the pandemic hit.
Yeah, okay. I was going to say, yeah, because we moved to LA like November. The pandemic was like February, March, and really shut down the end of March. But we had a chance to meet a couple times. Yeah. I was like, I remember the time at what's the name of the store? Always Gaming, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Always Gaming. And then we did the podcast, but I forgot that was in person.
Yeah, well, I think it was like, it was either 2019 or 2020 that we met in person to play games. And I know we played Gabe's space game.
Yeah.
And then I had one of my prototypes, which has completely changed since then.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask, how's it going with the prototype?
Board game design has been on hold for me. With the pandemic and being a new dad, I entered a contest. I don't remember when exactly it was, but after I entered that contest during the pandemic, game design kind of slipped away from me. I also had started the blog, and with everybody right at the start of the pandemic trying to put out all the resources that we got a hold of, and then it was reality struck, and how do I teach art from a computer?
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that first. But before that, I want to introduce you. So you are an art teacher. You're here in Los Angeles, obviously, since I did have a chance to meet you in person. Can you just share a little bit more about your background and a bit about what you do?
Okay, so I'm from Orange County originally, and I've been teaching art as a credentialed teacher since 2004. I had summer camps and private little painting schools that I taught at prior to that. But in 2004, when I started my career, I met a program called the Multimedia Career Academy that I ended up teaching video game design for as a part of my art curriculum. And that really got me into game design. It took me to the Game Developers Conference, Art Educators Forum, where I got to do a lot of study with game design in Savannah College of Art and Design. And that brought me back to board games, or introduced me to contemporary board games and reminded me how much I loved Dungeons and Dragons. And when I was no longer teaching video game design because I had to move schools due to layoffs, I wanted to keep the board game design aspect and teaching how to make video game art. And the school was very supportive of both. And so in 2014, when I pursued my master's degree, I actually did some formal studies on action research studies on teaching game design.
Awesome.
And so, yeah, I started designing games because I was teaching people to design games.
Yeah, I was gonna say your design is on hold, but at the same time you're teaching game design. So in a sense, you're kind of still like those gears are still turning.
They're getting to turn again. Last spring, I didn't teach my big game design unit.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Yeah, because last spring we were online, and now you're back in the classroom. What are the courses you teach? You mentioned them before we went live here, but can you share what the 3 courses?
I want to share how my day went and how my week's going with these classes, because this morning I started painting with The Art of Chill, the Bob Ross game.
Okay.
I developed a way to have tables play in groups, and it goes right along with the sunset painting project that we're doing currently. Introducing in cartoon animation superpowered characters, and I've got a simple role-playing game that I came up with for the purposes of kind of creating dynamic characters by taking them on an adventure. And so I've been refining that since we were talking about it just before the pandemic hit.
Yeah. I was gonna say,
I didn't implement it until the end of last fall. And then today ended with Design Craft. We played Floor Plan, which I need to say thank you again for getting me that game.
Yeah.
And I know you keep it in stock. It's a great roll and write. And in Design Craft, we study careers in various design fields. It's also where I teach board game design. But right now we're doing transition from architectural maquettes to an interior design of kind of a really large beach house. So it works out perfectly because it's called Floor Plan. You put your name as the architect, but it's somewhere between like the architectural design and the interior design, because where you put furniture and how doors open and close and all that stuff is really, really relevant. So yeah, those are my 3 art courses. In the past, I've had a student club that was focused on students making games of all, both digital and tabletop. And I also used to teach an after-school program, but I've cut back on the time that I spend on campus, just readjusting to it all.
Right. Yeah. I'm going to pull this onto the screen over here, the Bob Ross game. Let's see if we can pull it up. Oh, nope, it's not going to go over. Okay. We're not going to be able to share it, but it's pretty funny. Yeah. That's like just Bob Ross, and he has his like painted hair.
His painting is in his hair.
Yeah.
So I need to share with you how I how I set it up today, because I thought I was going to be broadcasting. So when students are on quarantine, not when they're sick with COVID, but when they're on quarantine, the school has equipped us to broadcast using a Google Meet. Right. So I have that camera, and then I use a document camera to set up the cards for the game, right? Because you need cards. Usually you have a hand of cards, but I have them. I'll write up my rules and share it with you sometime in the future.
Yeah.
Right. But I have this document camera, and so I took a picture of my desk this morning because it looked ridiculous. I had, here's the computer, here's the document camera, and then I had my screen over there. Usually I have a second computer on my desk because it works better than the one the school uses for everybody. Anyways, but I thought it looked really interesting. I had to put like a piece of paper because the fluorescent light was reflecting off the cards weird. And, just how to make playing a game as a class work.
Right.
That's an interesting game in itself.
Yeah. I mean, I teach at the same school as you, or I was there over the summer. Now I just do a run club, and I was instructing a board game. I think we just called it Fun with Board Games over the summer, because we were just trying to get a fun title to get people to sign up. And it was a socially distanced classroom. So I had to be pretty resourceful, as like, how do we make sure they're not getting too close together and still play the game? And we did a lot of projecting on the screen, and using your phone camera to take a shot of the board game, and then you project it on the screen.
I'm grateful that the school equipped me with a document camera. Right at the start of the pandemic, I used to live just in the same block as one of the IT guys, and so I asked for a document camera, and before the end of March, it was dropped off on my doorstep.
Oh, awesome.
Such a privilege, right? So I got at the end of that spring semester, I got to play around with it, and I did a bunch of live drawings for my students. And I created a bunch of content for my kids last year. So
I mean, is it easier now to use games in class now that you're in person? Like, having the experience of doing both virtual and in person, what would you say is easier?
Definitely in person all the way. But it's, this is a third way to teach board game design. So in person, prior to the pandemic, it was, okay, your group is making a game, and then go sit with another group and share your games. My dog is barking at the neighbor parking. Give me 1 second. Bodhi. This way. It's not that screen.
Odie.
Yeah. We recently got a second dog. Bodhi's been around for a long time.
Bodhi.
But we got Toby as well. So,
okay, Bodhi and Toby.
Yeah.
That's cool.
But where was I at? Board games, pre-pandemic, get up and move around wherever you want. Nobody's contact tracing the seating chart. Now, online, it was design a card game that nobody's going to play. So it became more about the art.
Okay.
Right. And, just revising the rules so that they have more of a thematic element. And I kept some of that. Now, so the one board game design project that we've done is modify a card game. And I had it as a group project, but every student had to make a set of icons and come up with a theme, a retheme for a like established card game that you play with the 54 card deck. And so as a group, they made their game, and one person would go over to another table and introduce it and have them play through it and be available to come over and answer questions.
Okay.
But they, like, the contact tracing thing is they can't be, if they're going to be around somebody for 15 minutes or more, it has to be documented in some ways. So yeah.
I like I said, I'm at the same school, but we do a run club, so we're outside. I don't have to worry about that. I'm not really sure what the protocol is for it, because we're outside and we're just running outside.
And I'm just trying to do my best to follow every guideline to the best of my ability. The interesting thing was I talked about broadcasting, right? And for students, one of my design craft classes had a large number of students that were tagged through contact tracing that they may have been exposed to COVID, and so they had to stay home, but they were designing their card game with their group. And they chimed in through the meet. And so I made breakout rooms, and they were able to meet with their group through that. And one group really made a solid game in that process.
Yeah, that's cool.
And it was not something I expected to do. Ever.
I mean, what was it? Sorry, I was gonna say what was really cool and you bring up a good point, your students designing like a pretty cool game. When I was instructing for board game design in the virtual world, it's crazy, and I explained this to the students that were in the class, that you are on the same exact page as these like multi-million-dollar companies who are trying to figure out how to make their games available to their fans virtually. So you're doing the same thing that these companies are doing right now. And just trying to figure out different resources and tools that they can use to be able to design it. I mean, like we use like PowerPoint, Google Slides. Or some other stuff.
Everybody calls those the various types of presentation software. Everybody calls it a PowerPoint. Right?
Yeah.
Because that's the brand that everybody knows. Like cotton swabs are called Q-tips.
Kleenex.
Tissue.
Cool. But I do want to move into talking about tabletop role-playing games. So I mentioned before I brought you on, that I started my first time playing Dungeons and Dragons is DMing, and you said that's how you started playing first, which is really cool, because I think a lot of people get intimidated with role-playing games and having to learn a lot, and even as a player or a DM. But I think if you find a player in your game group that are like you or I, where we enjoy that part of the game, and you have some grace with your DM where they're learning the game too, you don't have to play the game by like perfectly the first time you play it, and you can still have a really good time.
Yeah, so playing a role-playing game is completely different, or is there's a few things that are adjacent to board games, but it is a different experience. In board games, you need to know all the rules, right? Because it really instructs play. In role-playing games, you need to know the basics of the rules. In Dungeons and Dragons, it's you make a contested roll using a 20-sided dice. So I want to do this. Is it something that is more challenging than my character could easily do a thing, right? So, climbing a slippery wall right, in full plate mail is probably going to be pretty difficult. And so there's going to be some sort of challenge rating that I have to do, and I roll 20-sided dice to figure out if I do that. Now, you know, it gives you a kind of percentile range that's like less than rolling 100-sided dice, right? It breaks it down a little easier. So you started DMing a few months ago?
About a month ago. Yeah,
okay.
I would say about a month ago, maybe 5 weeks ago.
Okay. So I think it was like 1986 for me.
Yeah.
I went to the comic book store and I had been buying copies of Dragon magazine and reading them.
Can we ask about how old you were?
So fourth grade.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm not. So let's see. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-ish.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
So I picked up this red box and read it and tried to understand it to the best of my abilities. And I had like my two buddies that we played pretty much every day after school. And I'm like, hey, I got this, and we get to make fighters and magic users, and you could be an elf or a dwarf. Like those were all the different,
there's
like
a handful.
They were the classes, like elf, dwarf, halfling, fighter, magic user, cleric, and rogue or thief, right? Like as opposed to, are you a human, an elf, and then what class are you playing? Super basic, but I remember a lot of our time was drawing things from the books, and but I went at it. I gave it a try. I know that a lot of my time as a kid was spent with graph paper, drawing dungeons, and a part of that led me to contemplate doing architecture as a career.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
that's really cool.
Yeah.
Did you draw any? Did you draw any of the characters because you're an art teacher now and art as your background? Did you get into art at that point too?
I had been into art. Like I think, like the summer before, I had gone with like the same group of friends. We got signed up for a cartooning class at the like through Parks and Rec or like something at the community college. And I had like anytime I could find something on the TV that they taught you how to draw, I have a really specific memory about learning how to draw a donut.
A donut.
Yeah, well, and it teaches a lot of skills actually.
Yeah.
But now that I've got that behind me, but drawing characters was something that really interested me. Still does. Like the art that you find in those D&D books, which hundreds of pages of just colorful, super detailed art, right? That's what you have in stock, right? Like you have the player's handbook, the dungeon master guide, the monster manual, various campaign guides. They're just chocked full of art, almost every single page, right?
Yeah.
And the basic game that I got back, that boxed game had a lot of just black and white line drawings. But the cover is just the classic. There's one fighter and this giant red dragon that he's standing up against.
Yeah, they reprinted that, right?
For 4th edition, they did it. I don't know if they did it for 5th edition as well, but the artist did at Gen Con played the boxed set of 4th edition. Like during fourth edition, I was super into like every podcast I could get my hands on, watching authors and DMs play. I know, yeah. So it was super interesting to me. Fourth edition is where my heart is with Dungeons and Dragons, because when I started my career, fourth edition came out.
Okay.
Yeah. When I graduated high school is when second edition was kind of fading away. Okay. And during college, unlike a lot of individuals, role-playing games slipped away from
me. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it was similar for me as far as, I guess, just gaming in general. Like when not college, but leaving college for me, I had like maybe 4 years after college, 3 or 4 years where I stopped, like because I moved to Korea and I sold my PlayStation 2 at the time, PlayStation 3. And then I just never got back into gaming, just even like tabletop games or board games or video games. Just, I don't know, just was too cool for it, I guess. I don't know. Yeah. So if someone wanted to get started with like role-playing games, what would you recommend they do?
I like the starter kit or essentials. I was really impressed with fifth edition's starter kit, the first thing that they released. And also they were doing D&D Next prior to that release. So there was a bunch of content on character creation available, but they also have pre-generated characters. Pre-generated characters are a great way to jump in. You don't have to figure out how to create the character, and usually the game comes with a how to use this character kind of situation. And for a small entry price, like, you know, the Player's Handbook, Dungeon Master Guide, Monster Manual, that, you know, is a great investment if you know that you're in.
Yeah.
But that starter kit gives you, I think that I could probably, if I was playing 4 hours a week and dungeon mastering that, I could probably take that campaign through at least a half a year.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Because there's all this depth to it. There's different factions. There's different areas that you can explore. And if something gets emptied out, is it going to be taken over by some other entity? You know, like there's a lot of, it gives you a good part of the world to really build out of.
Yeah, I kind of wish I would have went with the advice of pre-generated characters, but also at the same time, I'm happy I gave my players the choice to start from scratch. But I do wish I would not have given one of the players the opportunity to play as a sorcerer, because this player is not familiar with fantasy tropes like at all, and also not very much a gamer either. So like a sorcerer is a pretty challenging character for her to play. But then I do like that. What's that?
I think that that's so fun to see a player new to the game, like learning how to be the character, how to play that character. Because it's like so in my game that I'm running on Thursday nights, we have 2 of my former students who are now in their 20s, right? Which is still hard for me to grasp. One new player that's the sister of one of them, she wanted to play a wizard that had a baby dragon egg. I'm like, if we got another player and it just means that they have a dragon egg, cool. Like that's a lot of potential for story. And and I could, I can imagine this character that's a sorcerer in your game, that this character is like a sorcerer, they get their, like, they have this raw magic. They don't have a spell book, but it's
Right.
like magic just comes to them and through them.
Yeah.
And so they're like learning to understand what that means. And I think that's a really interesting character to be playing, and but as a DM, you probably have never had an experience like that because this is your first time being a dungeon master,
Yeah.
or a storyteller or game master, the narrator. There's so many different titles for it, but it's the person who knows the sandbox better than anybody else. And sometimes that's just that the monster stats that they might interact with.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, I love that role, and I've been in this role like for a lot of different things throughout my life. Like I was talking to our group the other day. I was like, yeah, I mean, growing up, because it's Halloween season, we used to like make haunted houses out of our house, and like we would take our neighbors through the house, and I would give each of like my brother and my sister like things to do in the house when they walk through that area. So like doing stuff like that is definitely something I'm used to, but as far as like just having a new character, I think she's learning to play the game more, and she's warming up too. I know when I first played too, I sat there the first couple sessions. I think maybe the first session I said maybe 3 sentences the whole time I was playing. Cause I don't never, the first time I played a tabletop RPG, it was not D&D. It was very similar to D&D. But
What was it?
it's a friend's version of his own like home. It was called Northern Realms, but he's changed the name of it, and I'm not sure what the name of it is. But I'm just not used to
fantasy kind of setting.
Yeah, very fantasy setting. I mean, very much like D&D. There was like the rules are a lot simpler rules. And there was some different lore to the world too. But for me, like I'm used to board games. I'm used to being told what I can and can't do and falling within those constraints. When I played a tabletop RPG, I was like, what the heck? I can do whatever I want. Like, what am I really allowed to do? There's got to be something I'm not allowed to do, right? And so, like, trying to figure out what to do and navigate that to have a fun experience is kind of was new to me.
I would say that you're allowed to try doing anything. But I'm definitely a big fan of the I think it's called the X card, which is I'm not comfortable with the content or the direction this game is going. And you just hold up the card and everybody goes and stops. Like, okay, what's making you uncomfortable? And right. So, but that's not what you're talking about. You're talking about, okay, can I talk to the king?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, maybe. Like,
you can try. Yeah. Yeah.
Like that, those types of things. And I tried in my game that I'm running right now. It's like there's a little bit of a railroad, but I tried to let them choose what track to go down. Right. And, I like to have them describe what your character looks like. Okay, you've got, and so often with high school students, even adults, I'm a half elf bard. How pointy are your ears? Do you have a beard? Are you wearing a cloak? Or, do you have a cloth over your chainmail armor? Like that, those kind of things to kind of, and when when you start to describe what your character physically looks like, then you start to go, oh, okay, well, they maybe this or maybe that.
Right. Yeah. What really helped me is because, like I mentioned, the first couple sessions, and that was like one campaign, and then we started a new campaign. And what helped me in that new campaign is basing my character off a fictional character that I knew, and kind of made it my
What would
own.
they do?
Yeah, so like I could describe the character based off that fictional character and kind of create the backstory based off that character too. Um, yeah, I think that helped a lot for me, and that's what I kind of shared with our group. And I think it'll be really cool when we finish this campaign and start a new one, because now they know the game, they know what it means to create a character, create a backstory. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see where we go. They're kind of stuck right now in a point where it's like do or die territory. We ended the session at that point.
Most of my sessions end like that. We only play for 2 hours, so
yeah.
They either play like that, they end like that, or it's like, well, what do you want to do next?
Right. So maybe one last thing I can share. You can kind of provide some insight because you're a bit more experienced with DMing. I would suggest, as far as like maybe a new player, because for us, we were like a group of 4 of us and we wanted to start playing and trying the game. And for me, I was kind of the one that was encouraging it because I needed a group to play and to learn more about the game. But if you're like a single player, I would imagine most DMs would ask you to just join, and probably as comfortable as you are with whether it's the whole range of creating a new character and bringing that character to the game, or the DM might provide you with a character. I don't know. What would you suggest as far as like one person they want to go join a group that's already playing?
Well, I would say that organized play that Wizards of the Coast does, or that they did. I don't know what they used to call it, encounters. And usually at a friendly local game shop, there's it's like a regular like weekly meeting, and everybody can go in, and they're usually running one of the campaign books, that the newest one that came out. And there's usually pre-generated characters that are available, and experienced players and DMs to help kind of get you into the situation. The last time that I did that was when The Curse of Strahd had come out.
Okay.
And the local game shop in Simi Valley, which is no longer in Simi Valley, it's like in Arizona or something now. But they had a number of kids that came, like the age that I was, right? And so, Ravenloft is kind of the dark vampire-y setting, but they made it kid safe. And I think that doing organized play is a great way, because they're used to getting new players. But say you are invited to a new game, right? If the game is already going, right? So like my game that I've been doing on Thursdays, I've been doing since May 2020, right? So we're at level 6, or they will be in the next few sessions, I think. So if I bring somebody new in, I've got to get them a character that's level 6, because they need to be on the same page as everybody else.
Right.
And if they're completely new to the system, I need to have a session 0 with them, even though, and I want them to get comfortable getting to know everybody. So they sit down and they make a character with myself and another player, or they sit down with another player. I just brought in 2 new players into my game. One of them's playing 5th edition on another online game, right? But the other is completely new to Dungeons and Dragons. And so she made the majority of her character with her friend who's he's bringing her into the game,
Oh, okay.
right, and then we sat down and kind of figured out some of the details as to how her character works, and kind of just talked about how to role play, how that works, you know. And the character that she made is kind of this sneaky type, right? It's member of the Thieves Guild, right? And name is Shadow. So, you know, like, okay, you're not so talkative, right? Like,
Yeah.
but I try to give everybody's character, especially when they're new, a moment to shine, right? So as a DM, that's how I'd bring someone in. New players, you know, try to find a place that works. I know that there's a lot of online forums, Roll20, Fantasy Grounds, and stuff like that that have pickup games.
Okay.
But I've never done that before. Game conventions are great. I know that here in Los Angeles, Strategicon did their Labor Day weekend. Yeah, they were back in session, and I love playing role playing games there. I can go play a new system and be completely all right with it, because the people know to expect that.
Right. A lot of new players.
If they're not, if they're hoping to just have experienced players, they'll put it in the post. You know, so, and you know, it's about going to the friendly local game shop. I know that most of them have, you know, postings about when they do that kind of stuff. There's a really great one that has pretty much every night of the week there's something different that's on the table that's being taught. Like they have, you know, contemporary board game night. They have I think they do Warhammer or war games in various concoctions one night of the week. They do Pathfinder, which is another fantasy role-playing game. And then of course the bread and butter of every friendly local game shop, Friday Night Magic.
Yeah, right.
Are you a Magic player?
I've started to play again because again we're carrying Magic products, so I have to learn about it. And like Pokemon, I've had to relearn all about newer sets of Pokemon. Just a lot of stuff that it's fun though. Like, I love it, so that's why I'm doing it. So yeah, but I play a lot of MTG Arena, the phone app, because I usually get into a game on my phone and I play it like whenever have some like time waiting in line or whatever, and then I get sick of it and then I pick up a new game. So right now that's my game that I've kind of been playing.
Okay. Yeah, I've actually gotten into Duolingo as my go-to thing right now. Trying to learn Portuguese.
No falo porti something. I don't know.
No falo. You no falo Portuguese.
Yeah, there we go. I only know that because my wife says it because she took Portuguese in college and she only knows that still. So I don't know. I don't know anything else.
My Spanish, with the 4 years of Spanish that I took from middle school into high school, served me okay while I was in Peru for 3 weeks.
Oh, yeah.
Really grateful most people understood enough English to make it work between us. And we got to go to some off the beaten paths because of my wife's great planning. So
that's cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Matthew, for coming on and chatting. It was really great to talk about role-playing games, learn a little bit more about your role-playing experience. If anybody wants to reach out to you, how can they do that?
Table with Matt Bivens at gmail.com is the, I think, email that's easiest. At Bivens Art Class is my Twitter and Instagram handle. that hopefully I'll respond to you. I don't really check those. Or find me on Facebook.
Facebook.
Yeah, and send me a message to, like, so I know that I'm a moderator on your group on Facebook, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So it's been a while since I've chimed in there, but yeah, that's if you're a part of that group, and try tagging me in it, and asking a question there. I think that would be the easiest way for me to interact with folks is in
the group,
the Facebook group. I love that space.
And trying to remember I'm gonna put it in the chat.
The Google site.
It's group/learning with games. Group/learning with games. I think. Cool. Awesome. So thank you again, and hopefully we'll have a chance to meet in person again soon and play a game.
Yeah. Well, I'm definitely going to come by the mall.
Yeah.
See you
awesome.
out there.
Yeah.
And I think you were talking about Rhino Hero that 2 and up can play. So I think I need to do some Christmas shopping.
Awesome. Yeah.
Shop, so.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome. So thank you, Matthew. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and everyone else, we will be back next week. We won't do another stream this week. Sad.
Aw,
see you later.